Since the seat isn't really giving me a lot of leg room, I thought I'd tear it down and see how much more clearance I can get. So by removing this rear latch and then maybe cutting back this foam down to the frame, I think I'll get an extra couple inches of tilt on the seat, and maybe even be able to move the seat back a little bit more for some more leg room. Wasn't too bad. There's a lot of videos online to how to disassemble it. It's just a little finicky, some clips and wires, and pulling the seat cover off is a little bit of a pain, but it came off not too bad. So I'm going to try cutting this down and then setting it back in the truck. I mean, the seat upholstery got ripped apart by the airbag going off anyway, so it needs to be either repaired or replaced. It'd be nice to have custom covers, but we'll see if I can save the old ones. So we'll give that a try. Well, cutting the back of the seat metal off and then cutting back some of the foam actually made a huge improvement. It's lean back, so it's much more comfortable. I feel more comfortable with the foot position now because I'm in a better angle to reach everything. Yeah, that made a huge difference. I couldn't believe how much difference it made just by taking the bracket off, because there's a metal bracket that had to be cut off for the latch, and then cutting some of that foam off. And you know, I still got to do something about the seat cover, but I don't know, that was a huge improvement. So now I can figure out if this, you know, how I want to do the steering column and see where that's going to fit. So we'll see. I got the steering column set in place just temporarily. I wanted to check for clearance for getting in and out and position. I made up a quick temporary bracket on the plasma cutter to mount the back of the column to the original column support, just to get it lined up. It hangs down a little bit too far, but I don't know, that's about the best you're going to do. Position's great. I'm sitting in the seat, it's comfortable. I think it's in a good spot. I don't really need the tilt and extension option, but it helps make it fine tune it if I want later. So I think that's going to work out pretty good. I spent some time remounting the radiator and the fan and coolers. They're much lower now. They're much more proper position. I was able to trim away some of the frame and make room for the radiator. So now I got pushed pretty far back, so now the heat exchanger for the supercharger is not in the way of the grill or the latch, and that fits a lot better now. So moving the engine back 3 inches and then pushing the radiator back, making some room on the old frame. The old frame just had a bunch of bracing in the way. I just had to cut it out of the way and then drop it way down. So now the filter will clear much better. I'm not in the way of my mass air sensor or anything like that, so I think that's going to work a lot better. I think the seat's a little bit too high, so I think I'm going to cut the floor and relocate the mounting position, maybe bring it down a couple inches, because it's a little tight to get in there between the steering column and the seat. So I got to cut the floors all apart anyway, so what's the big deal? So I'll just maybe slice that up and temporarily position it and double check the seat position. After looking at the seat a little more closely and seeing how it sits on the floor, there's definitely some brackets that can be cut off the bottom of the rail. I mean, it's not going to give me much, but it's at least a starting point, because it's the inside rail that really holds it up higher. The outside rail is pretty far up above the floor because the floor is angled down towards the outside. So I'm going to try cutting all this extra bracketry off. I also powered up the motor to lower it as low as possible. So this, combined with cutting and lowering the seat, I might not need to modify the floor. I'll check it out. So that worked out really well. I'm using all the stock Mustang steering shaft just the way it came from the factory. I didn't have to modify it. Don't need to lengthen it, shorten it. Just to modify the firewall a little bit. So that's really cool. I did have to cut my temporary engine mount bracket that was clamped to the frame. I welded it because the clamp was in the way, and then I had to trim it. And when I was trimming it, I trimmed a little too much and the engine dropped. But I pulled it back up with the lift. So that's really cool. So the seat position's really nice. Steering column mocked up. You know, needs some braces and brackets and things like that, but I really think it's comfortable, and to me, that's what's most important, is to be able to drive it comfortably. Otherwise, you don't enjoy it. So that's why I'm spending all this time on the seating position, the steering, the pedals, because if I have to modify the firewall, I want to do that all now, not after the truck's back together and then find out something doesn't line up. So we'll keep going. Okay, changing plans. I moved the motor back up to the original motor mount position. So I got about 3 inches behind the engine to firewall. But I made it up by dropping that radiator like way down. So now it completely clears the intake air tube. I mean, it's jammed up in there pretty good with the engine, but there's room. I got plenty of room for all my coolers and radiators and hoses. So now that hose can drop down to that connection, and that hose can almost drop down right between that gap. and go down for the circulator pump for the supercharger. So I'm liking this a lot better, and now I'm thinking I'm going to punch that firewall out a couple inches, build a new one, and I'll get all kinds of leg room, have more room for the AC. Plus, I don't know why, but that recess is offset from center. I mean, you can tell there's the center of the truck, and that recess is way over. It might have been for the 6-cylinder. So that'll give me a chance to kind of clean up the bay and center a little bit of a dish for the back of the motor. Don't need much, but I can get at least 2.5, maybe even close to 3 inches of clearance or more room, leg room, by pulling that all the way out. So I'm kind of liking that. I mean, it's comfortable, the seat position's good, but you can always use more leg room. I'd rather move the seat up a little bit than have it all the way back and wish I had more. So I'm really kind of liking this. I had to ditch the air cleaner enclosure, but I'm still using the air cleaner. I'm still using the proper tube, mass air sensor. So I was going to need to build some kind of a fresh air intake box anyway. So that'll be, I think that's going to work out pretty nice. So I'm pretty happy about it now. I'm just going to cut the section out around the driver's side firewall and try to move it forward. I want to remock up the brake and accelerator pedals, and also mock up the bearing for the steering column. And this is just a mess. So I'm going to cut it all out. I'm going to build all new anyway, so I'm just going to cut it up and then use it to mock up so I can locate everything better. You know, moving the engine back to the original position is going to give me a lot more leg room, and figuring out the radiator location better. This is going to work a lot better. So, but might as well cut it up now, get it over with. I was still having trouble getting everything lined up properly. There wasn't enough room for the brake bracket up under the dash next to the steering column, so it needed to be moved over to the driver's side some more, and then I had to trim away some of the column mount. That's okay, I'll have some bracing on there anyway, but this will work a lot better. Having a couple more inches of travel or leg room by pulling the firewall out made a huge difference. A little bit of interference here, but that's just the bolt for the brace that goes across, which you can't use on this because of this whipples in the way of the stock brace, and I'll be making my own towers, and I'll make up a different kind of brace anyway, so that's not really an issue. It's not in the way of the strut tower bolts. Yeah, it definitely had to be moved over quite a bit. So what I ended up doing was just taking the master cylinder and the booster and the brake pedal and just mounting it right on that plate, and then moving it around until everything fit. So this is much better. I like to get the steering column pushed in a little further, because now by having to pull the steering column out so it misses that brace, I don't know about my shafts. I haven't tried connecting the steering shaft back up, so I'm not sure how that's gonna work. I might have to extend it if I can't get enough clearance up under the dash. So yeah, I kind of went caveman on the Firewall, but it had to be done. It was just too confining, not enough room. So everything's kind of just like tacked up in there with some bracing just temporarily, just to see if this is even going to work this way. So I think it's going to work nice. All right, that's it for now.